Thank you very much, James. I hope you get your voice back by the next panel, since you're going to be the one in my seat. So thank you all very much. I'm Jamil Anderlini. I'm the Regional Director for Politico in Europe. I'm really grateful, honored to be back here. I was here last year. Some of you might have been here as well. You remember I had a broken leg. I was hobbling around. All healed. James was just asking me, am I able to run? Not only am I able to run now, I went surfing last week, which is much harder than running, and no problems with the knee. So
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good for you.
It's so great to be back here with you. We did this last year, a year ago. I've seen you several times since, including a couple of weeks ago. But we were here at such an important, interesting, fascinating moment. It was the day before the US election, or 2 days before the US election, and we discussed the elephant in the room, which was obviously a quite orange-tinged elephant, being Donald Trump, who's now the president, as we know. You recently came back from the fall meetings in Washington, D.C. Tell us a little bit about the mood in Donald Trump's second age of Trump in Washington. Tell us a little bit about.
Yes, I remember I did say there were 3 topics and 2 elephants in the room, and I made a very detailed explanation, and then you summarized it perfectly. You say Trump and China, which showed you're a very good editor. And this time around, I'm going to summarize what I saw and then go back to the 2 elephants. First, what did I see in Washington, but what do I see generally when we have meetings with our counterparts? I was yesterday in London also, talking to other partners. I think that whereas the US and some are pushing back on a number of areas and want to drop out of the world, that the way the world was moving ahead in the past, I think the vast majority of the rest of the world is just moving forward. And there's a very strong call for tighter partnerships, closer partnerships. There was this reference in previous panels to variable geometry or, coalitions of the willing. Well, that's happening as we speak, and it's creating new coalitions, which I think are going to be shaping the world of tomorrow. And then, where is Europe in all of this? So I was thinking in the last weeks about our 2 elephants, because somebody in an event I participated in was talking about, we have this feeling of these 2 big elephants fighting each other, and we are the grass underneath. So we need to avoid that we're crushed and destroyed by the 2 elephants fighting. And then I thought, well, no, Europe is certainly not the grass. So what are we? So generally, I associate the EU to a rhinoceros. But since we are in Spain, you will allow me to talk about a bull today. So it's more like a toro, okay? So maybe our horns right now are a bit padded because we have these excessive dependencies regarding defense, regarding critical raw materials. But you generally don't want to upset a rhino. You don't want to upset a toro, a bull. And so I think, once we sort this out, we will be a strong player in this brave new world.
The world has changed enormously, obviously, since we were here last. How has the EIB, European Investment Bank, how have you been shaped by these changes, and what are the sort of differences that you've brought in over the last year?
Mm-hmm. Indeed, this new geopolitical context is actually putting the European Investment Bank in a quite unique position, because we have a very large balance sheet. It's the largest in terms of multilateral development bank, 600 billion euros, because we have a stellar AAA rating. There was a lot of discussion of capital in the previous exchange. Our core tier 1 capital is above 30%. It will probably increase with the new capital regulations kicking in. So we are also unique in that our shareholders are the 27 member states. And this may not have been so relevant 2 years ago, but it is extremely relevant today, because it means that our policies are fully aligned with the policy priorities of the 27 member states. And that means that I can continue to use words like climate or women, gender, development, finance, that are becoming forbidden for many other multilateral institutions. And that means also that we have a quite important role to play in the global context, and many partners are really interested to re-engage or to engage further with us because of this perception that Europe is searching for win-win partnerships. And that I think is an asset in this world. Trust, confidence, trusted partners. I think that's a very important asset in a world that is becoming increasingly transactional. You have to see your strengths, your assets, and build on them.
You, 2 or 3 weeks ago, you very kindly joined a dinner that Politico hosted in Brussels with the head of a major intelligence service, Western intelligence service. We had a very, I thought, fascinating discussion around security, defense of Europe. Can you tell us a bit about how EIB policy has changed towards the defense and security sector? Because previously this was kind of taboo for you, correct?
Yes. Since I became president of the European Investment Bank, I mean, having been minister and vice president of the Spanish government, I was obviously and very inserted into international geopolitical discussions. I had a very clear view that the European Investment Bank needed to step up our support to Europe's security and defense capabilities. And so we did. First, last year, we enlarged the scope of the projects that we would finance, still remaining in dual use. This year, we have moved beyond dual use, so we are financing pure military projects, which are extremely relevant, and I found the previous panel discussions absolutely fascinating, and they're very relevant for building these capabilities that are needed to reinforce Europe's capacity to also deter these kind of attacks. Whether it is key infrastructures for military mobility, critical infrastructures, a military campus in Lithuania, very close to the Belarusian border, which will host a brigade from the German army. So that's a European project, as European as it gets.
That's the first time since 1945, I think, that there's a permanent German presence outside of Germany's borders, correct?
At least willingly welcomed. Yes, yes.
We won't go there.
Then, of course, we're also financing projects in research. We have signed a very important agreement with Indra, key player here in Spain, also Thales in France. We're negotiating other deals. Financing for SMEs, this was mentioned also in the introduction by Anna. We have signed important agreements with Deutsche Bank, with the Banque Populaire, Caisse d'Épargne. We are in conversations exploring an option with Santander. I hope it will fructify before the end of the year to provide financing, working capital for SMEs in the value chain. We're also financing the emerging ecosystem of private venture capital funds dedicated to the area of security and defense. So the EIB is actually walking the talk, and while others are discussing, we're doing. We're on track to achieve the 3.5% of our total business this year devoted to financing in security and defense. And I can already tell you for next year, we will continue on the same track. We are proposing to our board that 5% of our financing inside the EU, so that's 4.5 billion euros, will be devoted to security and defense next year. So that shows, that the market is moving, that the ecosystem is growing, and that Europe is changing on that regard, and the EIB is accompanying that process, of course.
In those discussions, was there any kind of, you're owned by, as you say, the member states of the EU, was there any dispute or dissension when it came to this shift, or was it just unanimous? Everyone said, obviously we have to do this. Because I'm just
obviously, no, it's a very good point, Jamil, and I'm really grateful you mentioned it, because I was also grateful of the previous panel, because there's one thing that there are different views about this across the EU. And there are some countries that are not in NATO, for example. So obviously they maybe abstain when we make these decisions. There are other countries that are closer to the eastern border that are much more sensitive to this, and they are really pushing, and they want to go faster, further. I think we're in a very good spot right now with the European Investment Bank. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was the leaders meeting, the European Council meeting, and in the conclusions, there's some words supporting the role of the European Investment Bank. I think we're 100% aligned to what Europe needs. And the value added, the role that a bank, we're not a defense ministry, but a public multilateral bank can play in supporting Europe's capabilities, and that's what I think we will continue to do.
You're heading, I think, to Colombia for the EU Latin America Summit, and I'm flying tonight to Brazil for COP30, unfortunately. Quite a long way and quite chaotic, I think. How important is Latin America for EIB and the EU today? Like how much are you, given that we've moved to a much more multipolar world and traditional allies maybe not as reliable as before, how much are you looking to Latin America, or is the EU looking to that region?
Indeed, one of the elements of this new world is that we not only have these two elephants and two mega powers. We have a number of emerging middle-sized powers. They're no longer mid-sized, obviously. We're talking about India, South Africa, Indonesia, Brazil, obviously, Mexico. There are a number of countries around the world that have a stronger economy, and they want to have a strong voice in shaping the world of tomorrow. And I think from the European perspective, it's indispensable that we deepen our partnership with those countries, as we are doing. You see, the European Commission is traveling to India, traveling to Mexico. We're really looking forward to the closure of Mercosur. It's very important that we deepen and nurture these partnerships, because that is what's going to be the tissue for this security and prosperity framework for the future. And of course, being Spanish, I'm particularly sensitive to the partnership with our sisters and brothers on the other side of the Atlantic. I think it's a no-brainer from the political point of view that they are our closest allies. They share our values, they share our view of the world. In many instances, they share our language. In our case, they share our language. And so we certainly need to build that partnership further. And I see the interest by President von der Leyen, but also President Costa, and Chancellor Merz, that will attend this summit. Of course, Presidente Sanchez and other European leaders are investing in this important partnership.
Speaking of COP, again, the conversation around climate change, around what needs to be done in this area has changed enormously since the election of Donald Trump. How do you see the discussion going, and what is the EIB's, have you shifted your policies at all? You know, EIB is so forward-looking on this topic in particular. Have you adjusted or moderated in any way?
Well, I'll try to. There's so many things I'd like to share with you, but I'll try to be like TikTok style, as it was said before. So I'll try to be very synthetic in saying, first, the green transition is a no-brainer for Europe. It's not a matter of nice to have or future generations. It's a matter of today's competitiveness. We need to reduce energy prices, and we cannot rely on fossil fuel producers to the same extent we have until now. It's a matter of competitiveness and security, so a no-brainer. Companies are getting on with it. In our latest investment survey, we see that more than 90% of European companies are actually investing in this green transition. So they know that this is a matter of their future and competitiveness. It is also a matter of technological leadership. In the previous panel, it was spoken that we need to diversify energy sources, no doubt about it. But what I think we should not is give up the leadership of the technologies of the future. At least at the European Union, we're not going to give up that leadership. So we need to be leading those green technologies of the future. New fuels, of course, green hydrogen, of course, wind mill production, solar panel production. We cannot just give up that technological leadership. And then finally, we are in a good place because we are leading many of these technologies, and we have an ecosystem of companies that are engaged. So that's why, beyond the political discussions, I think it's very important that we continue to drive these policies, and Europe needs to have a strong voice, as it will. You know. And from the European Investment Bank, and let me close with this, we are really moving to a new phase in the run-up to 2030 with three key focal points. One is focus and priority to those projects that contribute to Europe's competitiveness, to reducing energy prices and security. Secondly, doubling financing for adaptation to climate change, as we see, and unfortunately, this country, we suffer it firsthand. The droughts and floods are the new normal, and we need to adapt and prevent the costs. And thirdly, radical simplification. And this is not only a word, we are really committed to no gold plating, reducing reporting requirements for companies, and making sure that there is more reliance on self-assessment, so that companies, in particular SMEs, and this is important for intermediated finance, for example, our agreements with the Spanish and European banking sector, that SMEs can self-assess if a project is green, thus reducing the time and the cost of having access to finance.
I'm going to push you a little bit because it does sound to me like you've adjusted somewhat, which is natural. It's happened at the EU level. It's happened around the world. You have adjusted somewhat the sort of singular focus on investment in green tech, and that's a fair assessment?
It is, yes. I mean, we're moving. There's a full energy revolution. There's an energy revolution, in full swing around us. Companies are now taking making the bet and making the necessary investments. So I think it's correct that we adjust our policies. We now have a robust framework, so we need to avoid that there's gold plating. We need to simplify the rules, reduce reporting requirements and red tape. It's a new phase, and it's very, very good that the public institutions adjust. My plea and my call to the European Commission, and we're working very closely with them, is do it as fast as possible, be as bold as possible. Also with the 28th regime, by the way, that the governor of the Bank of Spain just mentioned before, I am a big believer that if we get it right, it could be a game changer.
We've got very little time left, but I want to ask you a couple of shorter questions. You just mentioned simplification. We hear a lot about that in Brussels. Do you dare to say the word deregulation?
No, and I haven't heard any. I don't want to be take away the punch and be a party killer, but in Washington, in Europe, I haven't heard a single governor of a central bank, and we have some representatives here that know very well what I'm talking about. None of them is talking about deregulation or supporting deregulation, and so it's not in my remit anymore. So I'm just conveying what I hear. I don't see this as a trending topic in Europe.
Got it. I asked you, I don't remember if it was here, I think it was at another conference last year, I asked you about capital market union, now savings and investment union, and I asked how optimistic you were, and you were very optimistic. Are you still optimistic?
I am more impatient.
Yeah, I was very pessimistic.
More impatient, yeah. I'm really, I think if there are two priorities going forward, it's security and defense and savings and investment union, capital market union, call it as you wish. Last year we had Leta here, and I didn't want to rename the project. Call it as you wish, just do it. It's really urgent. We have an opportunity. We need to do it now. And I'm glad, by the way, that private banks in Europe are getting on with it too, and moving ahead with instant payments, very cheap instant payments. I was just talking to the ex-commissioner and saying how much we were pushing this agenda, both from the Commission, under the Spanish presidency. We adopted the instant payment regulation. I'm so happy that the banking sector is actually also getting on with it, yeah.
Well, I very much hope to be back here next year again with you, and then we'll see how optimistic, impatient, or maybe turned pessimistic you are about.
I have a question for you, Jamil, because I'm looking at this at the image now. Is it turning the right way around, or is it? I have the impression that in order to illustrate the current geopolitical context, the globe is actually turning the wrong way around. So I really hope that next year we will see the world turning, at least turning in the right direction.
I'm from the southern hemisphere. I think it turns the other way. So thank you. Thank you so much.